Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're not just reporting the news, we're putting on our detective hats. We're going to go on the hunt for Apple's next big thing, the iPhone 18 Pro. We'll piece together all the clues from leakers, analysts, and supply chain reports to build a profile of a phone that technically doesn't even exist yet.
So let's just dive right in, because every single year, the rumor mill is really fueled by one single desire. And this quote from Reddit user Platinum Binder just captures it perfectly. It's the holy grail for so many of us, right? A perfect, uninterrupted sheet of glass. It's the dream that seems to be driving every single design change.
And for years, Apple has been on this quest to deliver it. We've seen the bezels shrink, and then boom, in 2017, the notch appeared to house that complex Face ID system. Then in 2022, that evolved into the dynamic island, which was this really clever software trick that turned a hardware problem into a feature. Every single step gets us closer and closer.
So that brings us to the central mystery of the iPhone 18 Pro. After all this progress, is 2026 finally the year? Is this when Apple delivers on that all-screen dream? Let's start digging for clues.
Okay, our first and honestly most critical clue is hiding in plain sight. It's in the most debated feature on the front of the phone, the dynamic island itself. To figure out the future, we have to decode what's happening right there, right now. So right out of the gate, our investigation hits a fork in the road. We've got two conflicting reports from two very highly respected sources. On one side, you have Wayne Ma from The Information, who suggests a pretty radical change. The pill-shaped island is just gone, replaced by a simple hole punch for the camera. But on the other side, display analyst Ross Young is arguing for evolution, not revolution. He says the island is going to shrink, but it's definitely not disappearing. Two very different futures for the iPhone. But then, a crucial piece of evidence from a leaker known as Instant Digital seems to solve the whole puzzle. They're suggesting that this whole conflict might just be a mistranslation. The actual plan isn't to hide the entire camera system, it's to hide just one small part of Face ID, the IR flood illuminator. Now, why that part? Well, because it's a simpler component, which makes it the perfect test case to stick under the screen. The really complex stuff, like the dot projector and the selfie camera, they'd stay visible in a now much, much smaller cutout. And this is where the pieces of our investigation really start to click into place. The analyst Ross Young himself came out and backed this specific theory, confirming it's exactly what his own intel was pointing to. In any investigation, when you have multiple, previously conflicting sources start to agree on a very specific technical detail like this, well, that's when you know you've got a really strong lead. So what's the big takeaway here? Our investigation suggests we're not seeing the death of the dynamic island, but its evolution. You're getting more screen, less interruption, but that familiar pill shape and all its functionality looks like it's here to stay for at least one more generation. All right, let's flip the phone over, metaphorically speaking, and see how this camera system builds a more complete picture of the device, because this is where some of the biggest changes might actually be happening. Now, this is a big one. We're hearing from multiple sources, including the super reliable analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, that Apple is planning a major upgrade that would be a first for any iPhone, a variable aperture on the main camera. So, instead of a fixed opening that lets in the same amount of light all the time, this system would physically open and close, just like the lens on a big professional camera. And this is where it gets really exciting for anyone who actually likes taking photos. This isn't just some text spec on a sheet. It means you get incredible control over your depth of field. You could choose a razor-thin focus for portrait to get that beautiful, creamy, blurred background. Or you could stop the aperture down to get an entire landscape in super sharp edge-to-edge focus. It's basically putting pro-level photography control right in your hands. But the camera clues don't stop there. We're actually hearing about two very different kinds of changes. On the super high end, we might be getting a new, advanced 3-layer sensor from Samsung. And that is a huge deal because Sony has been Apple's exclusive supplier for forever. But at the same time, it looks like Apple might be tweaking the new camera control button to save a little money, keeping the pressure sensing features but getting rid of the more expensive touch layer. It's this mix of big, expensive leaps and smart, cost-saving tweaks. Of course, you can't investigate a new iPhone without looking at the engine that drives the whole thing. So let's crack it open and analyze the internals. Get ready for the A20 Pro chip. It's expected to be built on a brand new, cutting-edge 2-nanometer process.
Now, that number might sound really small and technical, but trust me, in the world of silicon, it's a massive deal. It means transistors are packed in tighter than ever before, which leads to these huge boosts in both raw performance and power efficiency. We're talking a potential 15% speed bump and a crazy 30% improvement in efficiency. That could be an absolute game changer for battery life.
And beyond the main chip, other clues are pointing to some big shifts inside. First, Apple is expected to finally introduce its next-gen C2 modem, which is all part of its long-term plan to design all its own chips. Then there's connectivity. Rumors are pointing to true 5G satellite internet. And we're not just talking emergency text here. We're talking full-on data connectivity when you're out in the middle of nowhere. And just for fun, reports are suggesting 3 new colors are in testing: burgundy, brown, and a new shade of purple. Okay, so after piecing together all the leaks, all the reports, all the analysis, what's our final verdict on the iPhone 18 Pro? Let's assemble all the evidence. Here it is, our investigation's evidence board: a smaller dynamic island, a crazy powerful A20 Pro chip, and that game-changing variable aperture camera. All of these have a high likelihood based on a pretty strong consensus from our sources. But the big one, the dream of a true all-screen display, it seems very unlikely for this year. The evidence says the dream is delayed. For now. But one mystery is still wide open. When do we actually get that all-screen iPhone? And even the top analysts are split. You've got Ross Young, whose roadmap is all about the supply chain, pointing way out to 2030. But then you have Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, who says a special anniversary model could pull it off as early as 2027. The final form is in sight, but the exact date is still a total mystery. Which brings us all the way back to the most important question of all. With a more refined display, a more professional camera, and a much more powerful chip, do these changes add up to that revolutionary leap you've been waiting for? Or are they just another small, calculated step in the iPhone's evolution? That's the real question, and we'll all be asking it on launch day. Thanks for joining me on this investigation.